The morning alarm at Nexus-Stellar Military Academy pierced through the artificial atmosphere like a banshee's wail. But Cadet 13 had been awake for hours. Sleep was a luxury his species had evolved beyond Vorthic primes, required only 2 hours of rest per cycle, their chitinous armor plating serving as both protection and a natural alarm system that detected the slightest vibration. Standing 9 feet tall in the communal washroom, Cadet 13 observed his reflection with clinical satisfaction. His exoskeleton gleamed obsidian black under the harsh fluorescent lights, each plate seamlessly interlocking like nature's own starship armor. Razor-sharp claws extended from his fingertips, organic weapons capable of shearing through titanium as easily as paper. His compound eyes, each the size of a human fist, missed nothing in their 270-degree field of vision. The other cadets gave him an unconsciously wide berth as they shuffled through their morning routines. A Centaurian with crystalline skin formations kept his head down, pretending to study his reflection while stealing nervous glances. 2 Corellian twins, themselves predators from a high-gravity death world, instinctively pressed against the far wall when Cadet 13 passed. Even the instructors, battle-hardened veterans of the galactic wars, addressed him with a respectful caution they reserved for unstable explosives. This was normal. This was proper. This was the natural order. Cadet 13's people, the Vorthic, had earned their reputation through conquest rather than diplomacy. 17 star systems had fallen before their advancing fleets, not through superior technology, but through superior predators. Each Vorthic warrior was biologically engineered over millennia of natural selection and controlled, breeding living weapons designed for one purpose: total dominance. The Academy's main corridor stretched before him like a canyon of steel and glass, cadets unconsciously parting like a sea of lesser beings. His footsteps rang against the metal decking with the weight of absolute authority. This wasn't a space station floating in the void. This was his domain, as real and tangible as any conquered world. "Did you hear?" whispered a Falani cadet to her companion, their cat-like features twisted with anxiety. "They're bringing in an exchange student, a human." Cadet 13's audio receptors, designed to detect prey heartbeats from half a kilometer away, easily captured their conversation. Humans, the galaxy's diplomatic species. Physically weak, mentally adequate, utterly harmless. Their homeworld Earth had joined the Galactic Alliance, not through conquest, but through paperwork of Wu Pei-Chi, concepts so alien to Vorthic, thinking that it barely registered as legitimate. "I heard. They have strange customs," the second Falani replied nervously. "They bring companion creatures with them everywhere. Living pets." Pets, another incomprehensible human concept. The Vorthic had long ago consumed every other species on their homeworld. The idea of keeping prey alive for emotional satisfaction rather than sustenance violated every instinct in Cadet 13's genetically optimized brain. The morning briefing. Room filled with the usual complement of future galactic warriors. Cadet 13 took his customary position at the back, where his towering frame wouldn't block others' views, a gesture that appeared considerate, but actually provided him optimal tactical positioning to observe all potential threats and escape routes. Commander Thresh, a grizzled Corellian veteran with plasma scars crossing his scaled hide, activated the holographic display. "Listen up, you soft-shelled younglings. Today, we welcome our first human exchange student to the Academy. Cadet Maya Rodriguez will be joining our tactical assessment program." The hologram flickered to life, displaying a small, bipedal figure with pale skin and strange, forward-facing eyes. She appeared fragile, almost delicate, with long dark hair pulled back in what Cadet 13's tactical database identified as a ponytail, presumably to prevent it from interfering with combat operations. Though he doubted this particular human would see any real combat. The human will be accompanied by what their species calls an emotional support animal. Commander Thresh continued, his tone suggesting he found the concept as baffling as everyone else. Apparently, it's some kind of small predator from their homeworld. Protocol dictates we treat it as we would any civilian auxiliary. A ripple of amusement passed through the assembled cadets. The galaxy's apex warriors were being asked to accommodate a pet. Cadet 13 felt his mandibles click together in what passed for vorthic laughter, a sound like breaking bones that caused nearby cadets to flinch involuntarily. Maya Rodriguez arrived at Nexus Stellar Military Academy aboard a standard diplomatic transport, but nothing about her entrance was standard. Where most exchange students skulked through the docking bay, trying to appear invisible, Maya bounded down the transport ramp with infectious enthusiasm, her Regulation Academy uniform somehow managing to look both professional and approachable. "This is incredible," she exclaimed to no one in particular, her voice carrying the kind of genuine excitement that made even hardened warriors pause. "I've read about Nexus facilities, but seeing it in person, the gravitational stabilizers alone must be pulling 3.7 Gs to maintain this kind of structural integrity in deep space." The docking bay fell silent. Cadets exchanged glances. This human wasn't displaying the appropriate intimidation response. She was analyzing their home. Cadet 13 observed from the elevated observation deck, his compound eyes tracking every movement. Maya appeared exactly as the briefing hologram had suggested, small, fragile, utterly inadequate for military service. Her skin looked paper-thin compared to his chitinous armor. Her limbs seemed barely capable of supporting her own weight, let alone engaging in combat. Yet something about her confident stride triggered a faint warning in his predator instincts. "Where's the creature?" muttered a Centaurian cadet beside him, as if summoned by the question. Maya reached into a specialized carrier at her side and withdrew something. Cadet 13's enhanced vision focused on the object, trying to categorize it within his extensive database of known life forms. Small, approximately 4 kilograms, covered in what appeared to be dense fur in a pattern of orange, black, and white. 4 legs, a long tail, triangular ears that swiveled independently. But it was the eyes that gave Cadet 13 pause bright green, positioned forward like a predator's, with pupils that contracted to thin slits in the artificial lighting. "Everyone, meet Mr. Whiskers," Maya announced cheerfully, holding the creature, like it was made of precious crystal rather than flesh and bone. "He's a domestic cat from Earth. Don't worry, he's completely friendly." Mr. Whiskers surveyed the assembled alien cadets with an expression that struck Cadet 13 as distinctly unimpressed. The creature's green eyes swept across the crowd with the casual indifference of a being that had never questioned its position in any hierarchy. When those eyes briefly met Cadet 13's compound gaze, something deep in the Vorthic warrior's genetic memory whispered a single, impossible word. Apex. The thought was so alien, so contrary to everything Cadet 13 knew about himself and his species, that he dismissed it immediately. This tiny Earth creature couldn't possibly represent any kind of threat. His people had conquered star systems. They had hunted creatures the size of starships on their homeworld. The very concept of fearing something smaller than his own claw was laughable. Maya was assigned quarters in the junior cadet wing, a decision that caused considerable debate among the academy staff. Humans required specific atmospheric compositions and temperature ranges that fell within acceptable parameters for most species, but their dietary needs remained mysterious. More concerning was the question of the pet. Regulation 847C clearly states that all biological specimens must undergo quarantine procedures, argued Medical Officer Vex, her Thalonian tentacles writhing with bureaucratic anxiety. We have no data on this creature's potential for disease transmission or aggressive behavior. Commander Thresh studied the small feline through the medical bay's containment field. Mr. Whiskers had been sleeping for the past 3 hours, occasionally opening one green eye to regard his surroundings before returning to what appeared to be a state of complete relaxation. "It's been unconscious for most of the examination," Thresh observed. "Hardly seems like an apex predator." What none of them noticed was that Mr. Whiskers wasn't actually sleeping. His ears continued to track every sound in the medical bay, the whisper of air through ventilation systems, the distant vibration of footsteps in adjacent corridors, the almost inaudible hum of the containment field itself. His nostrils flared occasionally, cataloging scents and identifying potential threats or opportunities in the observation room above. Cadet 13 watched the proceedings with growing confusion. Every instinct in his genetically optimized brain insisted that something about this scenario was wrong, but he couldn't identify the source of his unease. The human appeared harmless. The creature appeared harmless. Yet some primal part of his consciousness continued to whisper warnings he couldn't understand. Asterisk. 3 days after Maya's arrival, Cadet 13 encountered Mr. Whiskers alone for the first time. It was during the midnight shift change, when the Academy's corridors were nearly empty and the artificial lighting dimmed to simulate planetary night cycles. Cadet 13 had been returning from the advanced combat simulation chambers, where he routinely shattered training records and terrified his sparring partners. The Vorthic warrior needed minimal sleep, often using the quiet hours to patrol the Academy's halls, a behavior that served both to maintain his edge and to remind any potential challengers of his constant presence. The corridor outside the junior cadet quarters stretched ahead like a metal canyon, illuminated by emergency lighting that cast long shadows between support struts. Cadet 13's footsteps echoed with their familiar ring of authority, but tonight something was different. He wasn't alone. At the far end of the corridor, near Maya's quarters, a small shadow moved with liquid grace. Mr. Whiskers padded silently across the metal decking, his movements so fluid they seemed to defy the Academy's artificial gravity. Cadet 13 paused, curious to observe this alien creature's behavior when it believed itself unobserved. The cat stopped suddenly, head turning with mechanical precision to stare directly at Cadet 13. The distance between them was nearly 50 meters well, beyond the visual range of most species in the dim lighting. Yet those green eyes found him immediately, with the kind of instant threat assessment that Cadet 13 recognized in himself. For several seconds, neither moved. Cadet 13 found himself caught in that emerald gaze, experiencing something he had never felt before, the sensation of being evaluated as potential prey. The thought was so alien, so fundamentally wrong, that his combat systems automatically engaged. Adrenaline flooded his bloodstream. His claws extended involuntarily. His exoskeleton plates shifted subtly, preparing for combat. Every warning system in his genetically optimized brain screamed that he was in the presence of a superior predator. That was impossible. He was Vorthic Prime. He was the apex. He was Mr. Whiskers blinked slowly, a gesture that somehow conveyed more condescension than any insult Cadet 13 had ever received. Then the cat turned away, as if dismissing the 9-foot warrior as beneath notice, and continued his patrol with that unnaturally silent stride. Cadet 13 remained frozen in the corridor for several minutes after the creature disappeared, his enhanced nervous system struggling to process what had just occurred. His species had evolved beyond fear millennia ago. The Vorthic genetic template had purged such weaknesses from their biology. Yet standing in that empty corridor, staring at the space where those green eyes had evaluated him, Cadet 13 experienced something his people had no words for. The next morning brought the weekly combat assessments, but Cadet 13's performance was noticeably different. His instructors, accustomed to his overwhelming dominance, noted subtle changes in his fighting style. He checked corners more carefully. His eyes swept the room constantly, as if searching for threats that shouldn't exist. Most telling of all, when a maintenance droid skittered across the training floor, a common occurrence that had never previously caught his attention, Cadet 13 spun toward it with reflexes that bordered on panic. "Is something wrong, Cadet 13? Asked Weapons Master Korath, a Centaurian whose crystalline skin had been scarred by countless battles. "Your performance today seems distracted." Cadet 13's mandibles clicked in what passed for negative response among his people. How could he explain that he was being haunted by the memory of green eyes? How could he admit that a creature smaller than his claw had triggered every predator warning in his enhanced biology? Permission to review Academy security footage from last night, he requested instead. Korath's crystal formations shifted color, a sign of confusion among his species. Security footage? For what purpose? To study the behavioral patterns of the human's companion creature. The request was unusual, but not unprecedented. Cadet 13 had a reputation for exhaustive preparation, studying his opponent's weaknesses with the same methodical precision his species brought to conquest. If he wanted to analyze the pet's movements, it was probably just another aspect of his legendary thoroughness. What the security footage revealed, however, defied explanation. Mr. Whiskers had indeed been patrolling the corridor, but his route followed a pattern that made no tactical sense unless viewed from the perspective of a creature claiming territory. The cat had methodically marked key positions, ventilation access points, emergency supply caches, communication relay stations. Most disturbing of all, he had paused at each location to stare directly at the security cameras, as if acknowledging their presence while simultaneously demonstrating that their surveillance was irrelevant to his activities. But it was the maintenance droid incident that truly shattered Cadet 13's worldview. Near the end of the recording, one of the Academy's automated cleaning units, roughly mouse-sized and designed to be as unobtrusive as possible, had emerged from a service panel. Mr. Whiskers had noticed it immediately. Despite the device's stealth capabilities and near-silent operation, what followed was less a hunt than a masterclass in predatory precision. The cat moved with reflexes that made Cadet 13's legendary speed look sluggish, intercepting the droid's escape route before it had even begun to flee. But instead of destroying the device immediately, Mr. Whiskers engaged in what could only be described as play-batting the desperately fleeing droid between his paws with casual ease, demonstrating complete control over something designed to evade detection by military-grade sensors. The hunt ended with Mr. Whiskers growing bored and simply walking away, leaving the droid functional but undoubtedly traumatized by its encounter with a superior predator. Cadet 13 watched the footage 17 times, each viewing confirming what his instincts had already told him. This creature was not what it appeared to be. The invasion alarm shattered the Academy's routine with the harsh reality of war. Red emergency lighting bathed the corridors in blood-colored shadows as the artificial gravity fluctuated under the strain of multiple impacts against the station's hull. Cadet 13's combat instincts surged to full awareness, every enhanced sense, cataloging threats and opportunities with mechanical precision. All cadets to defensive positions. Commander Thrush's voice crackled through the communications system. Hive collective forces have breached the outer perimeter. This is not a drill. The Hive Collective. Even among the galaxy's most feared warrior species, the Hive commanded respect bordering on terror. They were insectoid perfection, billions of individual units operating with a single, implacable will. No negotiation, no mercy, no fear. They consumed worlds not for resources or territory, but simply because their biological programming demanded expansion. Cadet 13 moved through the chaos with lethal efficiency, his 9-foot frame cutting through, panicking junior cadets like a blade through mist. His compound eyes tracked multiple threat vectors simultaneously, while his claws extended in preparation for close combat. This was what he had been born, for what his entire species had been. Engineered to excel at dot, the first wave of hive drones poured through a hull breach on Deck 7 like a living tide of chitin and death. Each drone stood roughly human-sized, but built with the mechanical precision of a weapon razor mandibles. Acid sacs, limbs designed for rending rather than manipulation. They moved with perfect coordination, flowing around obstacles and overwhelming defensive positions through sheer numbers. Cadet 13 met them in the main corridor junction, his claws carving through their formations with practiced brutality. Drone ichor splattered across his exoskeleton as he systematically dismantled their advance, each strike calculated for maximum efficiency. This was familiar. This was proper. This was the natural order reasserting itself. But something was wrong. As he fought, Cadet 13 became aware of an absence, a crucial element missing from the battle's rhythm. Maya Rodriguez should have been in the civilian evacuation protocols, safely removed from combat zones. Yet his enhanced hearing detected something impossible, the sound of human breathing, steady and calm, coming from the direction of heaviest fighting. A tactical mistake. The human was compromising defensive positions through her presence. Cadet 13 carved his way toward her location, intending to ensure her evacuation to safety, not from any concern for her welfare, but because civilian casualties reflected poorly on Academy security protocols. He found Maya in Corridor C7, standing calmly beside an emergency bulkhead while chaos raged around her. She wasn't cowering or fleeing as her species' reputation suggested. Instead, she was speaking softly to something cradled in her arms, her voice carrying the kind of controlled authority Cadet 13 recognized in battlefield commanders. "I know, Mr. Whiskers," she was saying, her tone conversational despite the sounds of combat echoing from nearby passages. "They're very rude, aren't they? Invading our home without permission." Mr. Whiskers sat in her arms with an expression of profound annoyance, his green eyes fixed on the corridor where hive drones could be heard advancing. The cat's pupils had dilated to perfect circles, and something about his posture reminded Cadet 13 of himself in the moments before engaging enemy forces. "Maya," Cadet 13 approached with characteristic directness. "You must evacuate immediately. This area is no longer secure." She turned toward him with a smile that seemed utterly incongruous given their circumstances. "Oh, don't worry about us. Mr. Whiskers and I have everything under control." Before Cadet 13 could respond, the first wave of hive drones rounded the corridor corner, their mandibles clicking with mechanical hunger. They moved in perfect formation, a living weapon designed to overwhelm through coordinated assault. Each drone was individually formidable. Together, they represented unstoppable force. Maya set Mr. Whiskers down gently, then stepped back with a kind of casual confidence that suggested she was delegating responsibility to a capable subordinate. "Okay, boy," she said softly. "Show them why Earth cats are special." What happened next violated every principle of biology, physics, and tactical doctrine that Cadet 13 had ever learned. Mr. Whiskers flowed into motion, like liquid death given form. His movements transcended anything Cadet 13 had believed possible, not faster than his own legendary speed, but more precise, more economical, more perfectly calibrated to the specific requirements of the moment. The cat didn't run toward the hive drones. He simply appeared among them, as if the intervening space had become irrelevant. The lead drone, a creature that had never experienced fear in its genetically programmed existence, suddenly froze. Its compound eyes met Mr. Whiskers' green gaze, and something in that exchange communicated a fundamental truth. It was no longer the hunter. The remaining drones began to retreat, not from tactical consideration, but from pure, instinctive terror. These creatures, designed to feel nothing but hunger and aggression, were experiencing their first encounter with something higher on the food chain than themselves. Mr. Whiskers didn't pursue. He simply sat in the corridor, calmly grooming one. Paul, while the Hive Collective's most feared warriors fled in panic. Cadet 13 stood frozen, his enhanced mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. The small Earth creature hadn't used superior technology or overwhelming force. He had simply existed in a way that redefined the fundamental nature of predator and prey. The Hive Collective's retreat was as sudden and inexplicable as their invasion had been inevitable. Within hours, their forces had withdrawn from Nexus Stellar Military Academy entirely, leaving behind only empty corridors and the lingering scent of their panic. The official reports would cite unexpected tactical complications and adaptive defensive protocols, but Cadet 13 knew the truth was far simpler and infinitely more disturbing. They had fled from a house cat. In the aftermath, as damage control teams restored normal operations and cadets processed their first taste of real combat, Cadet 13 found himself seeking answers to questions his people had never needed to ask. He discovered Maya in the Academy's xenobiology lab, apparently documenting Mr. Whisker's dietary requirements with the same meticulous precision she brought to all her academic work. "You're not really an exchange student," Cadet 13 stated without preamble, his directness reflecting both Vorthic cultural norms and his current emotional state. Maya looked up from her datapad with that same incongruously cheerful expression she had worn throughout the invasion. "Of course I am. I'm here to study interspecies military cooperation dynamics for my dissertation, though I'll admit I have some additional qualifications that weren't listed in my academic transcript." Mr. Whiskers curled in a patch of artificial sunlight from the lab's environmental controls, opened one green eye to regard Cadet 13 with what could only be described as tolerant amusement. "You're a psychological warfare specialist," Cadet 13 continued, pieces of the puzzle finally assembling into a coherent picture. "The creature Mr. Whiskers, he's not a pet. He's a weapon. That's a very limited way of thinking about it," Maya replied, reaching over to scratch behind the cat's ears. Mr. Whiskers responded with a rumbling sound that Cadet 13's audio sensors had initially classified as mechanical malfunction, but now recognized as some form of communication. "Mr. Whiskers isn't a weapon any more than you are. You're both apex predators, evolved for different environments and different prey." The comparison struck Cadet 13 like a physical blow. His entire identity was built around his status as the ultimate predator, the peak of evolutionary development. To suggest that this small Earth creature occupied the same ecological niche challenged everything he understood about himself and his place in the universe. "But he's so ... Cadet 13 struggled for words, his language lacking adequate terms for concepts his people had never needed to express. Small, vulnerable, how can something so seemingly helpless command such fear? Maya's smile carried a hint of the same predatory satisfaction that Cadet 13 recognized in himself after a successful hunt. That's the beauty of evolutionary psychology. On Earth, cats aren't apex predators because they're the biggest or strongest. They're apex predators because they're perfect killing machines, refined over millions of years to hunt creatures that would make your typical galactic warrior look like a herbivore." She activated a holographic display showing Earth's ecosystem during various prehistoric periods. The images revealed creatures of impossible size and ferocity, predators that dwarfed even the Vorthic's legendary huntists. Saber-toothed cats, cave lions, prehistoric tigers, Maya continued, her voice taking on the tone of a professor delivering a lecture. "Mr. Whisker's ancestors didn't hunt prey animals. They hunted other apex predators. They evolved to kill things specifically designed to kill other things. It's a very different kind of evolutionary pressure than what most species experience. Cadet 13 studied the holographic predators, his enhanced vision cataloging their weapons claws. Longer than his own, teeth designed for crushing bone, muscles built for explosive power. These weren't the gentle house pets the galaxy had imagined Earth cats to be. These were living engines of destruction, and Mr. Whiskers carried their genetic legacy in every cell of his deceptively soft body. The Hive Collective ran because their genetic programming recognizes a superior predator when they encounter one, Maya explained. It doesn't matter that Mr. Whiskers is small by galactic standards. What matters is that he carries the behavioral patterns and biochemical signatures of something designed to hunt creatures like them. The revelation struck deeper than simple tactical understanding. For the first time in his existence, Cadet 13 confronted the possibility that strength wasn't just about size or technological superiority. The galaxy's most feared warrior had been humbled by a creature that weighed less than his individual claws, not through magic or superior technology, but through millions of years of evolutionary refinement. So what happens now? Cadet 13 asked, his voice carrying an uncertainty that would have horrified his instructors. What happens to the natural order? Maya reached down to stroke Mr. Whiskers, who responded by purring louder, a sound that Cadet 13 now understood was the equivalent of a Vorthic warrior's victory roar, condensed into a frequency that spoke directly to the predator brain. The natural order doesn't change, she said softly. It just gets more interesting. Earth has dozens of species, like Mr. Whiskers' animals we consider companions because we learn to live alongside apex predators instead of trying to dominate them. We call it domestication, but it's really more like a diplomatic alliance between different kinds of hunters. She stood, gathering her research materials with practiced efficiency. You're still apex predators, Cadet 13. You're just not the only ones anymore, and maybe that's not such a bad thing. The universe is a big place. There's room for more than one kind of perfection. As Maya left the lab, Mr. Whiskers paused at the doorway to look back at Cadet 13. For a moment, there, eyes met compound and simple, alien and terrestrial, predator and predator. In that gaze, Cadet 13 found not challenge or threat, but something he had never expected to receive from another apex species: acknowledgement. The great Vorthic warrior stood alone in the xenobiology lab, surrounded by data on creatures he was only beginning to understand, and realized that fear wasn't always about being prey. Sometimes fear was about discovering that the universe was far larger and more complex than even an apex predator could comprehend. And in that realization, Cadet 13 took his first step toward becoming something his people had never produced before: a warrior capable of growth. Asterisk.